Yo, 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 welcome back to White Dads Can't Jump. This is Kevin with the main man, Chad, and I believe we have a guest tonight.
We do have a guest. We got my buddy Patrick on today. So we want to welcome him on to White Dads Can't Jump. I want to take a minute here before we get started.
Yeah.
And I want to address something because I feel somewhat of a traitor to my people in my life.
Did you not run this morning?
No, I did run this morning.
Oh,
but when I say my people, let me put my hat the other way. So as people should know, I'm a big-time Bengals fan, right?
You wore it backwards because they're pathetic and miserable.
See, this is what I was going to say. This is what I was about to say. I have in front of me a Ravens fan and a Chiefs fan. My two mortal enemies that I can't stand either of them. And here we are. If we could find a Steelers fan, this would be like the trifecta of hate for me.
I found an 11-year-old Steelers fan today. I didn't know to bring him on the show. So.
Oh my God, that kid! Who lets their kid be a Steelers fan at 11? My God, what is that? Yins.
People with brain damage. That's why.
Yeah.
That's it.
At least we can agree on that.
There you go.
I did. Before we get into, I did see. Did you see the story today about Patrick Mahomes? That a sports analyst or podcaster in Kansas City was knocking Patrick Mahomes' dad bod.
Of all the things to knock him on, are you kidding?
He was caught shirtless somewhere, and he was like,
boobs?
"Yeah, oh yeah." He's like, "What? Shouldn't he be working out?" And of course, Pat Mahomes' trainer was like, "Dude, we need body fat to absorb the blows."
He's gonna need to get one of those bros, like from Seinfeld, where Kramer and George's dad invented the bro. It's like, bro, you need a bro.
I think he's probably got enough bros out there.
Yeah. After you miss your third Super Bowl in a row, I mean, clearly it's just come off the tracks. I know.
What a loser. I think when he was down 34-0 in the third quarter, he's just like, I'm just going to grow up my man boobs and have a pity
He started right there.
Cut my hair.
He's like, listen, I'll get back into shape when it's August 1st, but for the next half a year, I'm just going to let myself go and wallow in my own pity.
In a very nice house.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt.
In my own pity. And so houses, isn't that our topic of tonight?
It's one of them, yeah.
All right, good. So Patrick, this is your area of expertise. Yes, houses. I'm looking back here. It looks like you've got a very decked out house here.
It's somewhat decked out. It's an eclectic mismatch of shenanigans. I have nothing to do with any of it, by the way. Like maybe one thing. I don't know.
Okay.
But my wife and I own a staging business here in Lakeland. Actually, we just had a little spread in the Lakelander for the home edition this month. This came out in June. If you guys see it on the racks, you should pick it up. It's a fun little article.
Very cool.
We have a ton of clients that are real estate agents, a lot of homeowners, builders, and LLCs, flippers. We just basically stage vacant houses for sale and just kind of help with the speed of the sale and ultimately the sales price on the back end. So that's kind of what we do.
So now for the dads out there that might not know what staging means, if they haven't watched HGTV enough, what does that mean? Break that down for us. Staging
at a super high level that's super simple is if a house is vacant, we specialize in vacant property. So if it's not lived in, the seller's moved out of town, or just moved down the street, they've taken everything with them. Staging is basically furnishing a majority of that house for sale. It helps it showcase better. It just looks better aesthetically and design elements. So when you're looking at it online and in person, it just kind of provides more of a lifestyle and it allows buyers to connect with the space more. So most people, you tend to make a decision emotionally before they make one rationally. So if we can capture them on, the livability and the lifestyle this house is providing to them, their family, or whoever's the decision maker, or for whatever reason they're buying it, we just want to try to separate our clients' properties from the other ones that are on the market for sale at a similar price point and a 5 or 10 mile radius. What can we do to drive people to this property versus everything else so we can sell it faster for more money on the back end? So that's kind of what we do. We furnish it with really on-trend interior stylings from the furniture lines that we resource. We buy a bunch of accessories and decor and stuff like that. So if you've ever looked at the cover of a design magazine, you see the beautiful living rooms or the bedrooms and kitchens. We make it look just like that, but basically for residential sale.
Awesome. So you're kind of like making a story.
In a way.
Or having the house tell a story, and then
obviously I guess it's because my wife, Annie, she says every house has its own heartbeat. And it's true because every house is different. Every house has its own story, has its own reasoning why it's going on the market, whether that's a sad story or a great story or everything in between. Sometimes it can get real messy. It's a divorce situation or somebody passed away and somebody's inheriting an estate and they got to deal with like a bunch of kids in the family making decisions on how to sell this property. So a lot of times we're working with multiple people at the same time, or sometimes an individual homeowner. So it's fascinating because every house is different, even though our process is very similar on the day-to-day and the week-to-week. It's never the same look. It's never the same house. It's never the same style. And Lakeland is such a hodgepodge area for properties. Like I grew up in Maryland, just outside of the D.C. area, in between D.C. and Baltimore. Most of our styles of houses up there were simple. It was new construction, colonial, or basically, simple ramblers type stuff. You didn't have a lot of styles. Here in Lakeland, you get everything. I mean, you get new construction, mid-century, modern, industrial, transitional, coastal. I mean, it's everything. So the inventory that we keep is pretty substantial. We got a 10,000 square foot warehouse full of stuff, which is great. So we can resource from all that. And making sure that when we furnish these properties, it matches the style of the property, the architectural details. We're highlighting the features of the home, not necessarily the furniture, because that's what the buyers are buying. So we want to make sure we can have that home resonate to them as they make their decision. And that's it.
Very nice. I have a question. So I sold my last house about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was when everything was white hot. I mean, we had it listed for not even a day, and there were realtors on FaceTime representing people from New Jersey and Miami, and we had it closed by the end of the first day. And
Yep.
I would love to tell you that we did a little bit of sweeping maybe to prepare for that moment, but maybe not much more than that. And so is that sort of how your business works, that when the market gets almost too hot, it can actually slow down for you? And so this is sort of the sweet spot now, or is it really steady throughout?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm glad you said it. We've been in business for 15 years. So we've been through multiple election cycles, recessions, booms. And the great thing about professional staging is we've determined in our time doing this now, it's really recession proof and it's boom proof too. I'll give you some examples quick. So back when it was hot, post-COVID, 21, 22, 23, stuff was flying off the shelf. A lot of agents and sellers are like, oh, we don't need to do anything. It can be in terrible shape and people are going to buy it sight unseen. And a lot of times that was true. Stuff was selling. And then we've got probably a couple dozen agents that we work with consistently here in Polk County. And they've always kind of knew what staging was. Some of them understood it pretty well. But they started to figure out pretty fast that I could list this house for, probably pretty higher than what I would normally list it for, considering that market. And it will sell. I'll get like maybe 5 or 6 offers in the first couple of days. I'll sell for $20,000 over ask. But they started to get pretty wise pretty fast when they realized they can stage it, have that house showcased beautifully like it was out of a magazine. And they turned 5 to 6 offers into 20. And instead of selling for $20,000 over ask, we were selling houses back in those days for $80,000, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, sometimes more over asking price in hours. Sometimes minutes. It was ridiculous. Our fastest time that we ever went on our contract was 6 minutes after we staged it, because they saw our staging truck getting ready to pack up and load out. And they said, hey, did you guys just stage this house? We said, we sure did. And they said, well, do you mind if we came in and take a look at it? I was like, no, I don't think so. We know the realtor here. I'm sure they'd be cool with it, but let me give them a call real fast and I can put you guys in touch. And they walked in, their mouse hit the floor, and they absolutely loved it. They bought the furniture and they made an offer on the spot then for like $50,000 over asking price. And it was just an amazing success story. So
That's
even
amazing.
when the market's hot, we would still sell fast, just like the market was going. Fast was never a problem back then. But what you closed for in your pocket at the end was substantial. And then a recession is different. In today's market, it's more balanced. It's still leaning to the buyer's side, I would say right now for sure. Everybody that's moved to Florida has really done so, like post-election. And I think our growth has slowed down a little bit in Florida, although it's still super, super busy. But with socioeconomic factors being crazy, we're still into 6 months into a new election cycle. You've got interest rates high. The Fed's not sure what they're going to do. Like, people are kind of sitting tight unless they have to move or whatever the case may be. So when you get an inventory that has a lot more houses for sale and a lot less buyers, you start to transition to a buyer's market. So prices have dropped a little bit, although they're still kind of near all-time highs. But most of the times, the list prices are still near all-time highs, but the sales prices are down about 4 to 5%. That's an article I read from Redfin about last week. So people are still taking about 20 or 30,000 price reductions. So when they stage with us in a tough market, it's very unlikely for us to take price reductions. People make a small investment in staging their property, and they'll usually sell it for about 3 to 4 times faster than the current average in Polk and Hillsborough, but we sell for more money in the back end. And I think that's because of how it showcases and how it looks. So people fall in love with it online. They go through and see all the pictures more, and And that necessitates that snowball effect. It rolls downhill. They call their buyer's agent. You want to schedule the showing. You get more people in there than you would have if you listed it vacant, where you tried to virtual it, and it just doesn't look as good when you get there and you're like, you notice all the conditional problems. It's just not the same. So people kind of leave and they get a little bit let down when that happens. But with physical staging, it's very different. So I'd say, depending on the time of the market, we're kind of recession proof. So it works in a hot market and a cold one.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it was just last night, my wife and I were looking back at our old realtor pictures of our house before we bought it, and it was completely unstaged. And the rooms look so big. It's just like, oh my gosh, there's so much space in there. And obviously when we're sitting in a room that we're looking at this picture of, and like, well, a couch barely fits in here. So obviously I think it's important for people to get that perspective. And one question I have for you is, when you guys are staging a house, you said you look at the architecture, you look at the neighborhood, presumably, is there a potential client that you're gearing towards, like a demographic, family, and does that dictate your design?
Yep, there is. So we always like to say we're never going to play house in someone's largest investment of their life, right? This is someone's asset and likely their biggest asset they've ever owned. So for us, our most important thing is to ensure that they're getting the maximization of their return on investment when they invest in staging, and they're going to sell for the highest price possible. So we consider a lot of things. We're not just like, decorators or furniture placers. Like, we're professional marketers. Basically, that's what we are. We're house marketing. So when it comes into preparing our clients, every client, regardless of the size of this property, whether it's a 1-1 condo for $80K in Lake Wales, or we're looking at like a 10-figure multi-million-dollar estate in downtown St. Peter, Tampa, or somewhere down in Sarasota, everything matters to us, regardless of that client's price point and their background. It's all the same amount of like effort and time we put into it. So when we look into how we're going to stage this, we're considering the buyer demographic for the area. We're looking at the folks that we feel like could be primary targets, particularly in an age range that might really find themselves having interest in this property, and trying to tailor that as such. So we look at the hardware color on the inside, the floors, the material. We're looking at backsplash. We're looking at ceiling fans, light fixtures, like all that stuff. So when we're planning stuff out, it really needs to feel like it belongs in that house. And it's not just kind of furniture dropped into a space and called a stage. Like, everything that we do with our business is a lot more curated with intent. So it looks like it should be there. It looks professionally designed. If it looks staged, usually, you find a lot of stagers out there that will just stage a house and it looks staged and it kind of falls flat. But if you don't deliver a wow factor, is what we'd like to say, and really get people to fall in love with that space and emotionally connect, you're just kind of passing the buck to an extent to where it may be staged. But in 2025, we live in an era in the staging industry where you can't necessarily just rely on hiring any stager to get the job done. You need to hire somebody who's expert at design, aesthetic. They have experience. They have a lot of expertise. They have a robust trending inventory to make sure they have everything they need with the appropriate scale for your property, and marketing it. We do a lot of social media marketing. We do a lot of boosts on our Instagram and Facebook, because we have a lot of realtors that follow us. So sometimes we'll post a house that we're doing during that day, and you'll kind of give them a before and then give them an after little in the day. And as a staging company, we're not bound with the same ethics that realtors are, to where they necessarily can't market it to the public until it's live. Whereas 24 to 48 hours in advance, we can pump it out, tag the agent, make a story on social, start to get some, excitement about the property drummed up. And it's more often than not, you get a lot more views on Zillow and Instagram and realtor stuff like that, where it really helps to get that property traction a lot faster. And that's why our clients, I think, are so happy, because they see the level of effort we put in. We're not just someone who's transactional. Like, we're a lot more relationship based. So if it gets more eyeballs on it and sells faster, that's great for them and it's good for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the 10-figure St. Pete property. So that's like high-end condominiums, I would imagine?
You can get condos on like really elevated floors. You can get some really, really, really luxurious, like just, Annie likes to call them box mansions. Like, if you guys have seen that style kind of out there in Tampa, like they have it's like an 8.7 or a 6.5, and kind of looks like just a big modern box.
Yes.
But, it's just like the style that's going on these days out there. I know Annie doesn't really like it very much, but she just thinks it's too kind of like vanilla and almost too minimalist. That just kind of doesn't have too much of a soul. It's just more cold, but she really prefers staging like we do a lot of luxury and historical properties. That's kind of what we're known for, but we stage anything and everything, traditional houses like Chad's house in his neighborhood, our house, like, your house as well. Like, we can pretty much handle and have the skill to do it all. But some of those larger properties take a little bit more time and effort. I think a lot of people kind of have a misconception about how expensive it is to run a staging company. And more often than not, the average amount of inventory we're putting in a pretty standard house, like maybe a 3.2 or a 4.3, that's like 2,500 square foot, can be anywhere from $20,000 to $35,000. So a lot of times people are just like, oh, can you stage my house for $1,500? It's like, no. It's like you can barely buy a pleather couch at IKEA for $1,400. So you got to understand that when people are looking at staging or considering it, we have prices that can be afforded for every budget, but we have our minimums like most companies do, where they would inherit or take on a project unless it makes business sense. So that's kind of how we come in with it and price it out. But that, we do a lot of research when it comes into planning, buyer demographic research, looking at the aesthetic, making sure the interior house is going to kind of align with the way we're going to market it.
So what's it look like if you get hired so the realtor hires you?
Sometimes both.
Or the buyer or the seller?
Real estate agents, I think, are our primary folks that reach out to us first. We usually get the initial phone call or the outreach online from our social media or looking at our website from an agent. But we get quite a few homeowners that reach out to us on their own, builders, LLCs, flippers. So we have a nice mixed bag of a nice little repertoire of like different types of folks that reach out for considering staging as a marketing alternative. And for those folks that choose to do it, it tends to pay off for them quite well on the back end.
Now, do they have their design opinions that they try to interject into your design, or
they
do
try,
you just
they try to, but
stay off or stay out?
Annie's very nice and polite about talking about. We try to ensure that clients don't necessarily have a hands-on approach or trying to dictate like how it looks. We always talk to folks when you're hiring a professional expert. Let the experts do their thing and make the decisions that are ultimately going to benefit your house the best. But we always like to say, if you guys are interested in seeing our work or what we're going to put together or how it's going to look, that's why we have like detailed, significant amounts of work on the website, Instagram, Facebook. We're constantly updating it, like probably multiple times a week. I think at least 5 times a week. But if people are interested about what we're going to put in their house, we have an inventory tracking system. So when Annie selects the property, puts all the furniture together, we can put it together in what we call a crew report. So it shows what we're going to select by room. So if anybody's interested in seeing like what that looks like, so you can kind of get a feel for what kind of inventory is going to go in, sometimes we'll share that with them a couple of days prior to the actual execution of that property. But more often than not, they pretty much just trust us because they've done enough due diligence or research to know that this the work these guys produce is fantastic. They've looked at all the reviews. They've asked around, who would you hire for home staging in Polk County? It's always going to point back to us. Annie pretty much started this industry back in 2011. It didn't exist in Polk County. So she kind of laid the foundation and the pipe work for that. And there's been a couple other companies spring up here and there as far as offering those services. So we always like to say, the more the merrier. There's plenty of business for everybody in Polk and Central Florida. So the more home stagers that are out there, the ones that really care about what they do, they spend the time and effort to do their research. They have style. They treat their customers right, all that stuff. So the more the merrier. It's only better for the industry.
Yeah. Core business principles. And if you knew how to do this, you wouldn't have called me. So let me do my thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, who wants to go out and spend time and effort and purchasing $20,000 of furniture to use once and then try to sell it or store it? Like, it's just a logistical nightmare. We've got it all down to a science to where everything runs smooth. It's like clockwork now. We can like do this in our sleep and
given your talent, obviously in this field, I would imagine that a fair number of buyers walk in and say, "I want the house and the furniture."
Yeah, it happens all the time. We can price stuff out within minutes. Our inventory tracking system allows us to price by the room or by the whole house. So if a buyer's like, hey, this happened a couple years ago. My wife and I just retired from the military. We moved from Hawaii to Winter Haven because we have family out here, and we have a house that we're buying we have no furniture. We're leaving it all out there. We're not shipping it because it's expensive. We absolutely love the way that you guys, staged and decorated this, and we'd be interested in purchasing all of it. So, they asked us how much it would cost, and we put together a sales report for them in a couple of minutes, and it worked for the budget. We sold it all. And that's another thing, like with our stuff, like I would say, I'll rag on our own company a bit. Like when we started this back in 11 and 12, like the inventory that we had back then was really just kind of staging furniture. Like, you didn't have the designer lines, the wholesale purchasing like you have today that existed about 5 or 6 years ago when everybody started doing that. But we would probably never sell furniture that we had staged with 10, 11, 12 years ago when we were more kind of newer to the game and just starting the business, because it wasn't quality enough to where you could like sell it off and feel good about yourself to where your kids weren't going to sleep on a bed that didn't fall apart or sit at a dining room table where the chairs weren't strong enough to, have somebody who might be like maybe a hefty person or somebody who's a large individual to sit on without collapsing. But we put a lot of time and effort into buying a hell of a lot better quality furniture now. So we have no hesitation selling 100% of it, and it's ready to go, and it'll last for years. So if they like it, they can buy it.
So how did you what's the pathway to, you said 2011 you started doing this? Were either of you in the real estate industry to
so
go on this route?
My background is in facility management and education. And then my wife went to school for interior design. And out of school, after she got her degree, she worked for a couple large home builders, nationwide home builders in the design center. So she did a lot of interior design, development, layout. She pretty much made these magazine houses look like they should, and also designed people's interiors for like their own lifestyle. But when the market crashed in like 2009 and 10, everything went upside down, and all these builders were slowing down. People were getting laid off in the construction and the building industry. She was the last designer left in her entire office before she ended up getting let go too. But she loved the industry, and she had a passion for it. And one of her things was, all these people are struggling. We have so many foreclosed houses, so much stuff is sitting on the market. Like, what can I do to try to help this industry? And that's when she transitioned and kind of took the leap into starting her own business. It was very heavily interior design laden in 2011 when she started. Most of her clients were interior design projects that would take, a couple months or multiple months to complete and execute and basically furnish for a living. And then as she transitioned more to staging into like 13 and 14, we realized there was a nice niche here to try to rehab this industry where houses were sitting for months, years sometimes, and we could come in there, stage it, really kind of change the aesthetic and the look and give it a competitive marketing advantage. And we found pretty fast that we had a lot of our houses selling quick and for top dollar, and realtors talk and flippers find out, and people started calling us left and right, like, listen, I need my house sold. It's been sitting for forever. Like, what can I do? So we started doing vacant staging and some occupied staging back then. That's how it took off.
So just to be clear, do you guys offer interior design services now?
We still do, but very selectively. We do a lot of like the lighting packages, fans, flooring, backsplash, countertops. We can provide those design consult services, but we very rarely take on like a full interior design project where we resource like everything from our furniture lines, our clients. We kind of put together a couple of design boards or vision boards, if you will, so we can make sure we're capturing exactly what they're looking for their specific property, the style of furniture, the quality of it, what colors, like materials, stuff like that. We do about 2 or 3 of those a year, but we're just so inundated on the vacant home staging side. We just don't have a ton of time to get back into like full-fledged interior design. And there's some really good designers here in Lakeland. We know most of them. So usually if we get an inbound call for someone who's considering an interior design service or they want their house furnished, we usually just refer those folks out to the people that we know and trust that are designers in the area and just let them have that.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So it sounds like you guys are doing you've been in business for 15 years. You guys are crushing it. You're killing the fundamentals here. By finding your niche and staying with it. Have you guys dabbled into any of the investment on the real estate side yourselves, or are you guys just running the business and living life?
It's a little bit of a combination of both. So one of our goals is to have enough money saved up in the bank where we can start flipping our own houses. Annie has the talent to do it. We know a bunch of contractors and handymen and electricians and stuff, so we would have good resources to hire folks to help us do it. And then obviously we could furnish it with our staging company, or if we ever sold it, we could just hire them to furnish it for us and sell it. But we decided to, instead of go that route, because especially in today's market where it's a little bit harder to do the flips because everything's so expensive and rates are high. So we know a lot of investors actually that have been very heavily into real estate flipping in like 21 and 22 and 23 that have kind of put a pause on doing that and they're doing other things because it's very complex. So we started a secondary business back in 2023 called the Staging Collective. Our staging company is called Step by Stage Interiors, but the collective is staging based, but it's an international organization. So we kind of went global with this one, where we provide mentorship, education, guidance, and resources. We also provide a variety of discounts for like major luxurious furniture lines. We've got almost 50 companies across the nation and Canada that have joined. We meet multiple times a week and per month. We do a lot of Zoom calls. We have a once a year annual meeting that usually rotates around from our founder cities of where we have our businesses. And we have like a 3-day intensive where we talk about strategy and marketing and professional development, employee development, staff development, logistics, and really focus a lot of our time and energy on those specific individual companies that sign up for the collective, because they're all successful, they're all established, but they're perpetual learners. They always want to continue to learn and improve their bottom line or make their business better. So they've kind of found that community and that niche in the collective, and everybody that's in it is already successful. So we don't have any new companies in the collective, people that have been in business for like less than a year. These are folks that already are kind of well known in their city or their area, and they're looking to elevate this industry to like the next level and the expectation of what we would want staging to look like at a national level for brokers and for agents and for builders and flippers and stuff like that. So that's our second company we run now, in addition to Step by Stage. So we've got our hands full as far as not necessarily trying to spread ourselves too thin, investing in some properties that I don't know how we're going to figure out how to manage all that stuff unless we clone ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to make sure, is it fair to say it's almost like a mastermind group that you have built here?
You could consider it like the conversations we have throughout some of our weekly and biweekly meetings is very mastermind centric. But
Gotcha.
We get pretty far down the rabbit hole with all of our individual companies for their specific needs. And then we only allow one staging company per city or metropolitan market to be in the collective. So a lot of times when we go to conferences in the staging industry, or we go to different types of things, like you can have your competitor sitting right across the table from you, or a bunch of other stagers from Florida in the same room, and you don't necessarily want to share like your marketing secrets or your bottom line or how much you spend on this, and what your pricing structure looks like, because people could potentially take advantage of that and then use that against you. So everybody in the collective can know that without a shadow of a doubt and with security, they can open up, be very in-depth with other business and be transparent and know that no one's going to use anything they have to say or share against them in their area, so they can divulge all that information to get the maximum return on the help they need.
Now, when you're staging house, do you use any of your, I'm going to reference your shirt here, do you have the Metallica blasting in the background when people are coming through the house to kind of really set the stage for the right people that you want living in that area?
It would certainly make for a more fun work environment, but there's been times where we've let like our logistics team like play some music and stuff like that, like on a D stage where we're breaking stuff down. But we had a complaint once or twice in a neighborhood. It's like, oh man, the music's too loud and it's got explicit lyrics and my kid's trying to sleep at 2:00 in the afternoon. Like we would get a call. It's like, all right, guys, you got to turn the radios down. So we try to keep it professional. Like the guys can play like a little bit of music and stuff in our warehouse if they're like packing up the truck, or when they get back, if they're putting stuff back into the warehouse. But when we're out there in the field, we want to make sure our image is reflective of our realtors and of our sellers. We want to make sure we can execute, as close to white glove as possible, to where we come in, everybody knows who we are. The branding's all over the t-shirts. We're professional. We're making sure that we're operating and completing that job to their satisfaction and to the neighborhood satisfaction. So we're not making a bunch of noise or working on the weekends when people are trying to relax. So we just do this Monday through Friday, and standard business hours, 8:30 to 5. So in the evenings, we're not out banging the walls and hammering nails into walls for hanging artwork and starting the truck and driving down the neighborhood when kids are trying to play in the street and people are out and about on walks and stuff like that. So we try to keep it professional. So music somewhat, but certainly not rocking to the Metallica.
Very nice. So give us a few insider tips here. We all have houses, and the buy side, what do we need to watch out for on the buy side? What do we need to watch out for on the sell side? Like just, cut us straight to the, hey, here are the things that I see that most people don't know that they really do need to know.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the seller side. We tell people every single time, like whether it's a first-time client or they've worked with us dozens of times over the years, like there are 4 key ingredients to the successful sale of a property, really regardless of the market, of the conditions, what's happening out there. Like these are tried and true. So location, condition, price, and staging. So location's obviously important. It plays a big part in where people are looking to buy. Price is incredibly important. Like you can't overprice stuff like you did when the market was hot and just expect people to throw money at you and just buy your house. Like buyers are savvy. Like in today's age, when take-home pay is a little bit lower, interest rates are higher, inflation's gone up, although it's come down, thank goodness, due to this new administration. I think we can all appreciate that. But you have to price your house right. If you're overpriced, buyers are going to walk. They're going to find something that's better, at a similar bed bath size, square footage size, that for something they enjoy, and they're going to move on. So that's super, super important. The condition's important. We live in a turnkey society. Nobody wants to come in there and spend a ton of time and fixing this house and getting stuff done. Like you have to make sure that you're putting a little elbow grease into your property if it's not already in great condition, to where you're attracting buyers from a majority of the buyer pool, because some of those folks are looking for a fixer-up. It's not that many unless you're an investor and you get lowballed by an investor for way less than what your house is worth. So making sure that your house has good curb appeal, landscape is fresh, everything's trimmed up. If the walls are multiple colored, they've got scratches and scuffs and stuff, you got to paint. If your light fixtures are like screaming from back in 2000 or 1999 and they're ornate as all get out and you're like, oh my God, like this stuff is dated. Like, that dated look dates the house. It's just one of those things where you come in there, buyers are looking around, they're starting to, trying to tell themselves why I should not buy this house. And they get in their minds and they psych themselves out and they start to, add up on a couple of fingers and that turns into a couple of hands of all the conditional issues that they don't want to have to spend the time and money to do, and they walk. So conditional stuff.
I have to pause you right there. That absolutely sticks out for me. I remember as not an old kid, a 13 or 14-year-old, I was walking around through houses with my dad and my stepmom, and we'd walk through a house and we'd walk out and my stepmom would say, yeah, but the color of the kitchen, I mean, come on. And I thought to myself, it's paint. It's paint. You just paint it. But that's not how people think. Like you say, they're coming up with the reasons not to do it. And as superficial as something like that is, it will absolutely stop them from doing a deal and getting into a house that otherwise would have been perfect for them.
Yeah. If you watch like House Hunters on HGTV, they do that crap too.
Yep, they sure do. Like
you say the same thing. You're like, it's paint it, lady.
Yeah, people are visual, right? Like they want to. If they struggle to figure something out, it's very difficult for them to take an action on it. And if they're looking at stuff where it's like, oh man, I got to paint all this, or if like you never know like what kind of buyers you're looking at. Like if you have some buyers that are elderly and they can't paint it and they don't want to pay somebody to paint it, they're on a fixed income, you're already out because you didn't take care of it. If you have somebody who's who might be incapable of doing so, they're on disability or they're not able to paint it, or they don't want to do it, like they're not going to do it. So it's paint is one thing. Like we always like to say, paint and lighting are the icing on the cake. Like if you can only invest a little bit of dollars into upgrading your house in a few certain areas, like those are the areas that we say you would make the investments in, because we're going to tell people straight up, like they'll ask us what to do. We'll say yes or no. We'll say no on stuff that's you're not going to get the money back out of this if you do this to your property and you go to sell it. But if you do these things, you will certainly recoup your money on your investment for that. Light and paint tends to be one of those.
Does that fall into the staging realm? Is that something you can take care of for clients, the paint, or is that just something that you tell them they need to take care of and then refer them out?
It depends on what they need. Some people already have like their realtor or they already know as a seller, like a painting company, or they have a friend that does it so they can hire them. If they need like a resource or somebody we could suggest that we've worked with in the past who's done a good job. So for us, like anybody that we've recommended, we want to make sure that they're going to do right amongst our clients. So they're going to do what they say they're going to do. They're going to do a high quality job at a fair price point in the time frame that it needs to get done in. So we don't have any hesitation recommending folks or providing folks that we've used from like electricians or carpet guys or painters that can help if those clients need it. If they don't need it because it's in good shape, or they don't need to fix the paint and everything looks good and it's in great shape, we love those because it's just less work for us to have to deal with. And then we have a stage ready product already, so we can pretty much execute right away versus having to do a lot of conditional stuff. But I mean, it comes back to the conditional stuff, right? Location, price, now condition. You got to make sure your house is presentable, it's showing as best as possible, because you're competing with a whole bunch of other properties on the market right now, and it's a little oversaturated with a limited amount of buyers. So if you're not standing out, if you're not giving this buyer pool, a good reason to why they're going to want to choose your house, they're going to pass and they're going to walk, and then you're going to sit there.
In today's world, like everyone's online, so you can see all the listings right in front of you.
Yeah.
It's not like pre-internet where you have to go to the realtor's office and they would just have the flyer of the houses they were selling. Now I can see every house.
Oh yeah. Like, it's not advertising in the newspaper anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like everything's online, everything's social media, realtor.com, Redfin, Zillow, like that's where it's at. And if your house looks like shit and it's not put together well and there's stuff all over the place and it hasn't been cleaned, or if it's empty and it just looks soulless and barren and has no life, like people go through 3 or 4 pictures and like, what else? What else is out there? People like my wife, I know she's not the only one. Like people sit around in the evenings when they get home from work and stuff, and people have hobbies. They play video games, they play board games and stuff. But you know what most people do? They're scrolling on their phones, looking at Zillow, Redfin, or Instagram or TikTok, and they're just clicking on houses on Zillow and Redfin, just looking at what it looks like on the inside, bang, 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 whether they're buying or not. And they just want to see what it looks like. And that's a big, people love that. People love design. They love aesthetic. And people like pretty things, basically, is what it comes down to. So if they see something pretty, And then the fourth thing on that list, I kind of, get into staging. If it's professionally staged and it looks great, you're already giving yourself a competitive marketing advantage against the properties that aren't staged. So if it's vacant, it's lived in, those tend to take a little bit longer. And if it is staged, like all the statistics from the National Association of Realtors and RISA and, iHosp and all those places that do these surveys every year and constantly talk to brokerages and realtors about, is staging a good idea? Why do you think it's a good idea? What kind of return on investment would you get? They track all the sales of staged homes. And they constantly come out with numbers where staged properties sell anywhere from 1 to 17% more than if you didn't. But, you look at numbers like 1 or 2 or 3%, and you're like, oh, that's not that much. But if your house is 800,000, what's 1 or 2 or 3% of 800,000? I mean, that's 5 figures, easy.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of people pay us, our average deal value this year is $4,900. So if people are staging a $700,000 house or even a $400,000 house, and it's anywhere from $3,500 to $6,000 to stage it, and you have the opportunity to potentially sell for 3 or 4 times more than that, whether that's still selling for full or over ask price, which we still do in today's market, which is very difficult, or you sell for full ask or 99% of ask versus not staging, and then taking 2-3 price reductions at 10 or 15 grand a pop. I know if I was selling my house, I would much rather hang on to $30,000 or $40,000 of equity in my pocket at the closing table and invest in, staging $5,000 to do that, to put myself in a better position than roll the dice in the real estate casino and be like, oh, we'll wait and see what happens. We always tell people the first 30 days are crucial to the house life cycle. If you're not getting the traffic or the offers you want in 30 days, advantage buyers. They're going to start lowballing you on the price. They're going to start asking for concessions. And then it makes us cringe when we see agents and sellers be like, we really like the value, we see it, but I don't know if we can afford it and stuff like that. So we're just going to wait and see. If I had $100 for every time somebody's going to wait and see how much it costs them, I could retire. But we always tell people, it's did you hire a realtor? Yeah, I have a realtor. All right, cool. What does your realtor suggest? Did they suggest staging to you? Well, yeah, they did. It's well, listen, do you trust your realtor? Well, of course I trust my realtor. I hired him, right? Then listen to your realtor. If your realtor is advising you on the best course of action to try to sell your house for the most amount of money, they're coming up with a game plan, a listing strategy. They have their lender. They have their title company that's part of their team. They have their landscape guys. They have their electricians to make sure you're getting the best services and resources you got. But they also have their stager in their back pocket. So if they're going to talk about staging and why it's important, you should probably listen to them. And a lot of times, that gets us in the door. We have our consult. They hear what we have to say. If they say yes, they're in great shape. If they say no, it's all good. It's their money. They can make a decision if they want to stage or not. But more often than not, because we track all our stats, every bid we don't win, whether it doesn't get staged or they virtual it, we want to see how the time on the market and what they sell for stacks up against our properties. And time again, we sell for more and we sell a lot faster than they do. So it's kind of like a best kept secret. In Polk County, I feel like everybody's 5 to 10 years behind the times when it comes to Polk County, right? Even Central Florida, to be honest with you. Staging in Chicago and New York City, Miami, and San Francisco, everybody does it because they know it. It's a necessity today. It's not an option anymore. But it's coming around pretty substantially here in the last couple of years in the Tampa Bay area. So a lot more agents are doing it. A lot more sellers are doing it. And I think they're starting to get wise.
Well, I can tell you what, I'm certainly a lot more wise for just having this conversation, and I greatly appreciate it because, I'm old school. Staging is not the first thing that comes to mind, but based on what you're saying, it's no doubt the winning solution there. So, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us and both of our listeners. We really appreciate it. Main man Chad, any final thoughts for this evening?
I do have a question because you had mentioned there's some things that people can do or not do to add value or investments on there. What are some things that are as a yes to I should do that before I sell my house, and what's a no, that's not going to give me any return on investment?
I would start with the no's just to kind of check off a couple of no boxes. A lot of times, when you look at flooring, sometimes you guys have seen, I'm sure you have friends and family where you walk into the house and there's multiple floors. Sometimes there's carpet in the living room, and then there's vinyl laminate in the kitchen and the dining room, and in the bedroom it's tile, right? So if you've got a hodgepodge flooring thing going around and the sellers are already considering, it's hey, this carpet's kind of old, I need to do something with it, or, my flooring's buckling, it's not level, those are some pretty major things that may not even, number one, pass inspection, but you probably want to potentially invest in if you're looking to sell your house to make sure it looks good. But if the entire house is carpeted and it's in pretty good shape, and the seller's like, oh, I'm thinking about ripping out the carpet and putting in floors before I sell it. What do you think? A lot of times we probably say, hold the phone a little bit there. Don't necessarily go through that entire investment, put $20,000 or $30,000 into your floors. Somebody who might want to buy this might be looking for carpet, or if they want to switch out the floors and they don't like what you've chosen, and they're like, oh, this whole flooring system is like, I don't like the floors. I don't want to buy this house. You spent tens of thousands of dollars doing floors that may not be necessary. Like something on the yes side, you've got paint's old, it's scuffy, it's bad. The light fixtures are dated, they're old. You're missing bulbs, like the fixtures are broken. Like you'd be surprised at how inexpensive it is to get like new chandeliers and fans, and even paint some certain areas. It makes a huge difference when you're going to list your house. I know with us, like the last year, we actually started a program where people can pay for staging at closing, and they can pay for pre-sale prep at closing. So if they want to upgrade their lighting, if they want to replace their carpet that's stained and busted and it needs to come out, if they need to do anything with landscape, they can pay for all that stuff at closing escrow and pay nothing out of pocket to make sure their house is in shape and in presentable showcase ready condition, and then pay for all of it at the proceeds of closing. Unfortunately, we're still in a market where most people still have a lot of equity in their homes. So most people are going to walk away with like 5 or 6 figures, and most of the homes are selling. So if they want to make sure they're walking away with the highest price, they can pay for that stuff, defer to closing, and then still do that if that's something they're interested in. So I would say those are some of the yeses and those are some of the nos.
Good deal.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much again, Patrick. We really appreciate it. Be good.